ThinkTech, raising public awareness about technology, energy, globalism, and diversification. As part of the ThinkTech series, today's show is The Arts in Hawaii. I'm your host, Donna Blanchard, Managing Director of Kumukuhua Theater, and talking with me today is Lisa Formosa-Parmigiana of Chicago Street Theater, of Columbia College, and of the Actors Studio. That's right, the Actors Studio. And today we're going to talk about the business and politics of making art. Remember that we broadcast live on the internet at 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock p.m. every weekday. All of our shows are streamed on ustream.tv and Spreaker.com. And if you want links to our live streams or our previous broadcasts, and there's a lot of them with some really great information to look at, just go to thinktechhawaii.com. And if you want to join us in our downtown studio gallery for any of our shows, just write to j@thinktech.com. So Lisa's on the phone with us. I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction about her. She's currently the Director of Education at Chicago Street Theater and an adjunct professor at Columbia College in Chicago. Since 2001, she has also taught 2-week intensive and master classes in Caracas, Venezuela. In addition to her personal experience with the world-renowned list of members of the Actors Studio, Lisa has also developed and executed projects and programs with Black Nexus and Wildlife Theater companies, and worked in programs with artists such as Susan Bastian, Tracy Letts, and Ping Chong. Her resume of courses taught includes ensemble development, collaboration techniques, film casting and directing, and the method. Thank you so much for talking with me today, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Donna, for having me. I'm thrilled that you asked me.
Absolutely. Last summer, Lisa came here to Kumukuhua Theater and worked with us on a collaborative writing masterclass that was actors, writers, and directors working together to create art that we performed within a very short 2-week period. We created an entire evening of entertainment, three plays. And the work in collaboration that Lisa has done, that she has really made a name for herself doing, is the reason we invited her out to Hawaii to do this. And I think it's what really, Lisa, I think it is a footprint of which you should be very, very proud.
Thank you, Donna. I'm crazy about ensemble and collaboration, and it was the focus of my master's work, and I just really can't give up on the idea. It was a very exciting and very challenging 2 weeks when I spent time last year in Hawaii. I was very grateful for that opportunity.
It was pretty magnificent. Lisa and I have been friends for a long time. We worked together at Chicago Street Theater, and I had at one point said to Lisa, if you could teach a class on anything, what would you put together? Just design it and send it to me and let me see what it is. And she did, and she had put together a beautiful program, and then I was contacted by Inter Island Terminal in Kaka'ako and asked if we could create a community story piece focusing on Kaka'ako to be performed there. And the class description that Lisa had given me really fit perfectly into the needs that Inter Island Terminal wanted to fill, and it just so happened that we helped them out, but we also brought this wonderful technique of collaboration and creation to Hawaii. And I got to spend time with Lisa for 2 weeks. We got to spend time working as well as playing. It was really wonderful. Lisa, if you don't mind, can we start off with the Actors Studio? From how old were you when you think you decided that you really wanted to go there?
Well, I had a bit of a fascination with acting in New York from the time I was probably 6 or 7. And I remember listening to Paul Newman talk about his experience at a place called the Actors Studio. And I don't know, maybe 9 or 10, I had no idea of what that was, but I was fascinated by what he had said and talked about actors and writers and directors working together just for the sake of experimenting and trying to be better at what they were doing without the pressure of critics and openings and audience. And as I got older, I thought, wow, that's really interesting, because theater isn't, to me, I think to most people, an incomplete art form. If there isn't an audience, there has to be some kind of response, whatever response that would be. So the idea that they were doing something at this place called the Actors Studio without the pressure of an audience, I didn't really understand that until I got a lot older, and I realized that, you know, we try to perform, and when you don't have that pressure, when there isn't a critic or an audience, it could borderline be something that's indulgent, but on the other hand, it can really then allow you to explore and take risks in a way that you might not otherwise take risks. And then that began really my fascination with ensemble, with American repertory companies, with the idea of just working at the craft for the sake of working on it, the process instead of a result.
At that young an age, I'm fascinated that intrigued you at that young an age. I think that most of us, myself certainly, at age 10, 11, I knew that I loved to perform. I loved the craft itself, but I couldn't have imagined it without an audience. I couldn't have imagined the benefit of it without an audience at that point. So you were truly born into this work, I think. Do you think that came from the way you were raised?
I think so. Maybe in some ways. I mean, you know, I'm fortunate enough to have a really wonderful, large Italian family, and the individual is nowhere near as important as the whole, the family. And that doesn't mean that who you are on your own is not certainly appreciated, but there's just something to be said about the greater of the whole, and that family is, you know, the most wonderful thing you could be a part of. So I think this idea that family is a greater thing, that there is strength in a group, and that you have, I don't know, a better shot at a lot of things if you have that support. That's certainly totally a part of my entire upbringing, definitely.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it about that before. I was raised in a large family, but we were so separated by ages. I was nearly an only child. You know, it felt like that, and I don't think I really understood. I didn't grow up with an understanding of something being more than the sum of its parts until I got a little older. Yeah. So I think that a lot of people don't know what really goes on at the Actors Studio, and I am ever fascinated by it myself. The concept of working on a craft to become a better craftsman, just as hard or harder than you work on a piece that is eventually going to be in front of an audience. In other words, working on something to make you a better artist, period. Would you indulge us just a little bit and talk about what actually goes on in the studio itself?
Sure. If you have auditioned and been selected to Life membership, then every Tuesday and every Friday morning there are sessions at the studio. The main studio is in New York, and there is an Actors Studio West that they opened a branch in, I believe, the late 40s, early 50s, because so many members of the studio were working out in Hollywood, so they have a branch in West Hollywood. But the idea is you have all had somewhat of a common base of training or exposure to one of the American greats as far as teaching American acting. It would be either Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler, Sandy Meisner, possibly as well Harold Clurman. And their ideas, their ideology and philosophy was really rooted when they started the group theater. And Strasberg was responsible for a great deal of the beginning acting exercise work. There was a split between him and Stella Adler. They all really started their own schools. But the idea is that most people who are drawn to the studio are in some way exposed to what would be considered American method acting. And it took me a long time to realize how many myths are really connected with it, and that what most people view as method acting is, in essence, in my opinion, almost really the opposite of what the truth of it is. So when you have gone through a series, a hierarchy of positions, gone from an observer to a working finalist, and then you've auditioned and been selected for membership, you can actually, there's a book, a sign-up book, and you take responsibility for, you know, what you feel you need to continue to work on or what you would like to explore. And you sign up for a session and you explain what you're doing and why. Sometimes the work is individual, sometimes it's scene work, and there's a reason behind it. And you sign up for your session, you say what you're working on, and then the session happens, and there are a collection of moderators, veteran members of the studio. There's an artistic director of the studio. I mean, currently, the artistic director in New York is Ellen Burstyn, and Mark Rydell and Martin Landau are the co-artistic directors in West Hollywood. And you come to session and you do your work, and the lights come up, and the moderator asks you, what were you working on? And you tell them. You tell the moderator and you tell the membership. And
so
they give
you would
feedback.
be, I'm sorry to interrupt you, you would be telling them what your goal was with that piece. I was working on toward vulnerability or loss or something like that, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You could say, I haven't done a private moment since I was 20 years old, and it's, 20 years later, and I think I should try one again. That's just an exercise that you work on your own. You could say, I doubt I'll ever be Juliet again, but I really want to try to work on being believable in an environment where it's difficult to believe that I've never been kissed or never been in love. So I want to try to use some of the exercises and apply that in this scene. So when they say, what are you working on? You say exactly that. I haven't done a private moment in 20 years, or I haven't worked on believability in a very long time. I've gotten very patterned, so I chose something that would be hard for me. And what I was working on was one thing, trying to have one honest, believable moment. And so then the moderator says, okay, well, members, let's talk. And the membership gives you feedback on what they saw. They respond to you and to your work. And then the moderator concludes and wraps it up. Oftentimes there's a recommendation of you should work on this next time. And here, so-and-so, you need to do that too. So in 3 months, I want to see a scene from the two of you on that. Excuse me. Sometimes the recommendation is come back again, do it at a different pace, or you need to do it again next week because you were not committed at all. So
yeah.
it's not a class, but it's a great place for you among your peers to just have feedback for the sake of working on something. And sometimes people are working on roles and they bring in particular character development. Sometimes somebody is just working on continuing to be better at what they do.
And what they already do. Lisa, we're gonna break for just a moment. We're gonna come back where we are. I'm Donna Blanchard, Managing Director of Kumukuhua Theater with ThinkTech in Hawaii. This is the Arts in Hawaii. We're talking with Lisa Formosa-Parmigiana, and we'll be back in just a moment. Hi, we're back and we're live. I'm Donna Blanchard with Kumukuhua Theater, and this is Arts in Hawaii. I'm talking with Lisa Formosa-Parmigiana, and we're going to pick up right where we were. Lisa was talking about her work at the Actors Studio, the actual function of the Actors Studio, and thank you very much for going through that quick synopsis. I would love to, we could not only spend an entire show on the method, but someday soon I would love to have you come back to the island and actually teach the method here. But I really appreciate your going through that in particular because I'd like to talk about the art, the process of the business behind art and how we do what we do there, because I know from working with you that as the you are, as so many of us do, and you do very successfully, you teach, you design education programs, you help design curriculum as well as manage the teachers, as well as direct, as well as perform, and we do all of these things out of the love that we have for the art, but also sometimes you do it, sometimes it feels like you do it in spite of the art.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk, if we could, a little bit about the theater that you worked with in Chicago, the theater that you helped start in Chicago. Do you mind if we go there?
Sure, that would be fine.
Okay, so you had been in Chicago, and I'm very sorry to tell everyone that Lisa and I were in Chicago working on our acting careers at the same time, and knew some of the same people and saw some of the same shows and never met each other until much later in life.
It just wasn't the time, and it's probably better maybe that it wasn't until later that we met. But yeah, that's unfortunate. That I think would have been wonderful to have met each other at that time.
Oh, yeah. But so you were working with a group of people there, and am I right that you had been working together at other theaters?
Well, we had all been together as undergraduates, and we were pretty immersed in a very intensive theater program, and we were terribly influenced well, I was born and raised in Chicago, so I used to sneak away to see plays. I didn't drive. I used to ride the public transportation and get lectured by my father to make sure that I called him for a ride home should I end up at any particular theater, because he didn't want me taking the L home from there. I was really influenced by what I saw, or what I thought was a real ensemble. And crazy enough, when I graduated then, to get together with the core, with those of us who had been through an intensive 4 years together, and to try to recreate that. And we actually did quite well for a while, and unfortunately then, a lot of people, several in the company, really wanted more individual stardom than forming a group and sticking with the group. So after some pretty good work, we were able to really understand how different it was to work together and in the same ensemble. And I was a huge advocate for that. I kept saying, if this is the only thing we have that's different from any place else, and we should continue to stick together. But
so how was? Oh, I beg your pardon, Lisa. Do you mind talking a little bit about how that was different? What was your mission statement at the ground level?
Well, what was different is, when you've known somebody for 5-10 years, and you've either acted with them or directed them, or even socially, you've just partied with them, and their strengths, their weaknesses, the tricks that they pull. You have a shorthand. You can talk to them and say, do that thing that you do. This is appropriate here. Or stop doing that thing that you always do. Don't back out. Don't back away. Challenge yourself to go to a different place. So we were, I think, in my opinion, able to do, some of the best work that we've done because of that, because we all knew each other really very well. And that makes you different, I think. That, to me, is what ensemble is. I think that the hard part about that is it's a double-edged sword. Because you know each other so well, you can do really great artistic work. And because you know each other so well, you can really get under each other's skin.
Yeah, there's the rub. How many of you were there that started the theater in the first place?
Well, there were 4 core members that started, and in our strength, we had 12 ensemble members, and we really moved forward quite quickly. We moved forward very quickly. I was quite surprised, but we were enthusiastic. We didn't know any better. We really didn't know that what we were doing was as hard as it was. We had all the energy in the world. All of us worked full-time jobs, and then we headed right to the theater at 5:30, and we were there till midnight, 1, 2 in the morning, and we'd do the same thing. We had that much drive and passion, and we always went on an annual camping trip to kind of revive our unity, and it was a great thing while it lasted, and I'm grateful for what I learned from it. But it made me really question what it is to be in an ensemble, and how to collaborate, and how to get along without having to destroy personal relationships or include those personal sides in the artistic work. And that's a fine line to walk, but I've been obsessed with it ever since. I mean, that's the kind of work that I like to try to do.
Well, and I think, boy, as soon as you step into the midst of what nobody has done before, and of course you want to be work with a team of people, as soon as you go there, then you run into where does the ego fit into what we're doing, because they exist. You can't say leave it at the door. We walk, it's part of us. But
Right.
that can really get in the way of any ensemble work, whether it is within a family, in a theater, in a business, planning a party, you know.
Yeah. I think ego for sure in any capacity, and yes, it is a necessary part of life and who we are. And I also think, unfortunately, sometimes money creates a great deal of angst. We are judged oftentimes as artists by how valuable we are based on how much we've been paid to do our art.
Yeah.
We're dying to be able to support ourselves as artists, and so that means that we want to be paid for what we're doing. On the other hand, I know it was the hardest lesson I ever learned, was to really start asking to be paid to teach and to do the work that you do. I mean, the first 10 years I taught, I never took a dime. All that teaching that I did was for the theater company, for just to do it because I love to do it. I never thought I would ever be able to make a living doing that. And then once you start garnering attention and critical acclaim, and you start getting an audience base, and all of a sudden you really start taking money in as the theater company, that, surprisingly enough, was all we really wanted and all we worked for. And then once that started happening, that's when we started to fall apart.
Well, and isn't that why the Actors Studio was formed in the first place, to not have that pressure of the audience and the almighty dollar?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That is definitely why. I mean, the group theater for sure too was created to try to break away from stereotypes, from the the idea of the star system, and from money and all of that. It is exactly why it was started. It's part of what is the foundation of the studio, and yet it takes money to even keep the Actors Studio, the physical building, open and renovated. And I mean, it takes money, but I don't know. It's a hard thing once money gets involved. It's a necessary part of what we do, and yet there's so much baggage connected with any time money has to be a part of the arts, but it has to be.
It has to be. I find myself dealing with that on a regular basis, and I think this is why so many people who have been involved in art and then move into administration have a hard time going back and forth. When I am backstage and I hear a full house or a not full house, I cannot help but think in terms of accounting of that. It's there. It's hard to get it out of your head so that you can just be the artist that you are there to be at that time. Yeah.
Of course, because we want the doors to these theaters and to the opportunity. We want that to stay open. Plus, we want people to come and see the work, and that means that they're buying a ticket. So it's always this double-sided blessing and curse at the same time, both ego and money, I think, or anything you do in the arts. And my greatest challenge for all the time that I've been involved with it has been to try to find a balance between those two sides, the blessing and the curse of it all.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem like you can have one without the other, because eventually that work that you're doing in the studio, the goal really is to be a better performer so that you can work with, you can continue to build on your work, and really the finish point, a huge step along the process is the performance itself.
Yes, absolutely. And so very few are able to really support themselves making a living just doing the kind of role you want to do in the kind of film or play you want to do, with whom you'd like to work with. I mean, I think there's probably only a handful of artists that are able to achieve that in their lifetime.
Yeah, yes, I agree. And we need to go into another break here. I just want to add to that part of the beauty of the Actors Studio is not the big names that are there, but the idea that those people, like Paul Newman, could go anywhere and work with anyone he wants, and he chooses to be there.
Yes.
I think that's the import of those names we all know. I'm Donna Blanchard with Kumukuhui Theater, and this is ThinkTech in Hawaii. The show is The Arts in Hawaii. I'm talking with Lisa Formosa-Parmigiana, who couldn't be any more Italian if she tried, and we'll be back in just a moment. Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. This show is The Arts in Hawaii on ThinkTech Hawaii. And I'm talking with Lisa Formosa-Parmigiana. And we're in our final segment here, and I want to talk about, Lisa and I would both like to talk a little bit about what success looks like to the average artist, not necessarily the Angelina Jolie's and the Brad Pitts of the world, but the rest of us who are doing some really amazing work and some who are really on the vanguard of our artistic invention right now, I believe. And it comes out, coming out of ensemble work, coming out of that synergy and teamwork. I see it more and more, Lisa. I'm hearing more and more about companies bringing an artist into the business side of the business, just to make sure that they are getting that viewpoint of interpretation, but also understanding that the collaborative spirit with which an ensemble theater works is valuable in the rest of the world as well. The concept that what you bring to the table by virtue of who you are is valuable in any situation.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's let's talk about some of the successes that you've experienced recently as an artist, and I'm going to leave that wide open where you'd like to go with it. I hear that you just directed a fabulous show. I'm so sorry I couldn't get back to Valparaiso, Indiana to see it. The work that you do with your students at Columbia College. Any anecdotes you'd like to share with us about a recent success?
Well, I will say this, that an awful lot really struck me this summer about just having a life as a teacher and as what I would consider an artist. And that, this summer production, we did a summer Shakespeare, and we were outside in a new plaza, Central Park Plaza, that Valparaiso built 2 years ago. And within 2 evenings, a Friday and a Saturday evening, it's estimated that 2,500 people came to see Shakespeare for free outside under the stars. Now, that in and of itself just gives me chills. But at the end of that weekend, I was beyond exhausted, because you're not just able to focus on the art of what you're doing. You're not able to come in and set up this lovely director's chair and just sit there and sort of give this vision and coach actors and work on all of that. You're also, you're sweating, you're putting up a set and taking it down and putting it up and taking it down, because you can't leave it outside for longer than the evening's performance. And you're running around saying hello to people and trying to make sure that people feel good about the event and about being there. And literally after 48 hours, those of us who were behind the scenes as well as outside watching and being a part of it, it's a tremendous sense of accomplishment, but it's also, nobody really, I don't think, unless you do it, has any idea the amount of volunteer hours and time that goes into the kind of theater that we do. And I'm most proud of it because, to go about your daily life and to be a dentist or a lawyer or to have children and to get them on the school bus or whatever it is that you do all day, and then you still have enough love and passion to volunteer endless amounts of hours, not necessarily being on stage, but sewing or doing 1,000,001 other things. I really, that sense of community, that sense of being a part of something grander, I don't know, that gives me a tremendous amount of satisfaction, although it's exhausting. I really have to say that when you go through that with a group of people, to me it's much more valuable than the smaller experiences I've had where you are only there as an actor, you come in, you do your thing, and you leave. It wasn't nearly as gratifying, even though it was absolutely exhausting. It's truly gratifying to do that kind of work. Oh no, maybe I'm crazy.
Beautifully put. The Network of Ensemble Theater conference was here in Honolulu last month, and I had an opportunity to spend a lot of time with those people, and the conversations that I heard were all so very similar about the passion, the amour that goes into amateur. And my favorite quote from the week was, over dinner, a woman, we were all sharing our stories about the hours that we put in as administrators and as artists. And one of the women at the table said, well, of course, and I'm also mayor of my city, so that eats up a lot of my time. But the theater, the time that you spend there and what you gain, I think it is exhausting, but we both spent, after a full day of work, another full night at the theater, and it's just absolutely worth it. And I don't really understand what that is. it's a combination, right, between the energy that we build up working with this really wonderful group of people, as well as the opportunity for which we should never forget to be grateful to exercise our artistry.
Right.
That,
Exactly. I just feel very lucky to be able to continue to do it.
yeah.
And to see, my 11-year-old son run around being a part of understanding, well, that's a prop, that's a light, that's got to be here, that has to be there, and, even being able to give feedback on, well, I think that makes more sense tonight, Mom, you really got to the bottom of that, and to see other kids that are part of the theater watching and learning, and for those of us to embrace them and to say, sure, come on in, sit down, watch, be a part of it. I mean, there are so many professional places you could work where maybe that would be embraced, but for the most part, it's not. And that's the other thing that I love about that kind of theater, that you have a sense of family, of watching people grow up, being a part of that, and realizing that in the grand scheme of things, it really is only a play. That, life is beyond all of that. And so there's also, I think, a really beautiful perspective that it's great that we're also dedicated to doing it. And on the other side, it's great that we also realize that life is what's more important,
Lisa, that you just said that so beautifully. I'm not even going to add another thing to it. Thank you so much. You just put it. Amen, sister. And that's why I'm just hell bent on finding a way to make sure that theater, not only our theater here in Hawaii, but to help other theaters all over the world be able to not have to worry about the funding, to just do that incredible work. So I have to wrap up. I'm very sorry to say. I am Donna Blanchard of Kumukuhua Theater. This is the Arts in Hawaii in the ThinkTech radio series. I've been talking with Lisa Formosa-Parmigiana. Thank you so much for being here, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Donna. It's always so fun.
I know, and I'll call you after we finish this, and then we'll just dish about what's going on everywhere. Thank you to our communications director, Chrissy Goffigan, and to Jay Fidel, who helps put all of this together in the ThinkTech studios. And thanks very much to you for listening. We'll be back next week, and you can, again, check out our previous broadcasts on YouTube. Just go to thinktechhawaii.com, and please like us on Facebook. We'll see you next week. Aloha.